It's nice to see such a strong turnout today, and I'm thrilled to introduce a strong poet, Mitchell L.H. Douglas. You're in for a good time. Mitchell L.H. Douglas is the author of 2 poetry collections. His most recent, Black Alphabet, was published through Persia Press and was the winner of the 2011 Lexi Rudnitsky Editor's Choice Award. His first collection, Cooling Board, a long play poem, was published through Red Hen Press and was nominated in 2010 for a Hurston Wright Legacy Award and an NAACP Image Award. In addition to these honors, Douglas is an associate professor of English at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, IUPUI, a founding member of the Appalachian Poets, a Cave Canem Fellow, and poetry editor of Pluck, the Journal of Appalachian Arts and Culture. On top of all this, he's a homegrown talent from Louisville, Kentucky. Black Alphabet is a touching collection of poems that explores the complex ways in which family continually shapes us into who we are and to who we will become. At times, the family within Black Alphabet is made up of relatives, mothers, fathers, grandmothers, aunts, and uncles. But families are often much larger. And this book reveals how neighbors, churches, music, and even the landscape itself work themselves like threads through the fabric of who we become. Douglas, throughout this collection, navigates this theme with a graceful and musical poetry that quickly puts readers at ease, allowing them to wade through this deep and rich family history. We ride with Uncle Jimmy in his sky blue Cougar as Al Green testifies on the radio. We eat dinner on neighbors' porches, and we contemplate the cotton fields of Alabama, turning barbed tufts in our hands, testing the pain man made. Perhaps most touching is the ultimate realization that even death can't keep family apart, that the loss of those most dear also shapes and forms us into stronger, more loving people. We are asked throughout this book to bear that weight and be changed. As Douglas writes in one of the book's final poems, do you have the heart to grieve? Please join me in welcoming Mitchell L.H. Douglas.
Thank you all. It's so good to be here. I have not been in Paducah. It's been a little while. And what better reason to come back than when a friend says, please come read. So it's great to be here. What I want to do today is share a little bit from both books from you because they're so different. Cooling Board, my first book was actually a book of persona poems. So I'm writing as someone else. And there was a soul musician by the name of Donny Hathaway that passed away in 1979. And for some reason, I don't know where I first heard his music, but I kind of became obsessed with telling his story. And I don't think that enough people have written about him. To this day, I think there's only two full-length books about him, and mine is one, and the other is another book of poems, which is really interesting. So what I wanted to do was share a few poems from Cooling Board so you can kind of see how the book works. It kind of, there's poems that are like liner notes, there are alternate takes, so you hear the poem one way and then hear it differently later in the book. And there are many voices throughout the book. Donny Hathaway is probably best known for working with other people. Which is one of the things that I think haunted him as a musician. So I want to read a few poems from the book that'll give you a sense of kind of who he was and what he was passionate about. So this first poem is in his voice, and although he was a soul musician, he actually was very fond of country music. So this is a poem in his voice, imagining kind of the potential for country music. It's called On Country and Western, and this is in his voice. I dig the simplicity, white blues with banjos, box cars from the rails of our burden. Everybody's got something to ache for, love or lack of, what we want and will never be privileged to. Heard Cash talk about doing shows behind bars, Folsom, San Quentin, how all those men living caged might rest a little easier hearing him, feel a day or two slip off a 20-year bid. I wonder if there's room for lap steel and rhythm and blues, harmonica like Hank instead of Stevie. If I sang country, would America buy a black man out of costume, pick fiddles over saxophones, spurs for walking shoes? What bars would break, souls heal? So one of the greatest things I think about Donny Hathaway was not only was he a great musician, but he had a really, really rich voice. He met his wife, Eulalia, at Howard University. He never finished because he was working professionally and got lured away from college by Curtis Mayfield to play and just started making records in '69. But his wife was also a singer, and she basically found out that he didn't want to sing, which is kind of like crazy to think about someone with such a great voice didn't want to sing when that's what we know him for, so well now. So these are poems in her voice. This is called What Eulalia Hears. Singing is out, he says. Like raised voices are meant to be discarded, discovered years later, like outgrown clothes in attics of dust. I have never met someone so blessed, yet so afraid to share the gifts God gave. Not the keys, he gives that freely. The proof of so many Sundays rocking the choir holy. It is written in him by and by, words too bright for a back to turn. I can pray all day, but that boy is crazy if he doesn't let the world hear him sing. I loved his song before I knew his name. What Eulalia Hears, alternate take. Before I knew his name, singing is out, he says. I loved his song, like raised voices, hear him sing if he doesn't let the world. I can pray all day, but that boy is crazy, like outgrown clothes and attics of dust. I've never met someone so blessed, yet so afraid, too bright for a back to turn. It is written in him, not by or on. Words are meant to be discarded, discovered years later to share the gifts God gave. So many Sundays, rocking the choir holy, the proof, not the keys. He gives that freely. So I want to transition from Cooling Board, a book that was totally outside of myself, to my new book, Black Alphabet, that is about my family. And it's funny, I was just having this discussion with Professor Shirley's class about this idea of, we don't want to automatically assume that the speaker in a poem is the author, but in this case, these are autobiographical poems. This is me in this book. And so the difficulty between these books is here I'm writing about someone else. So you're thinking, well, how well does he write as that person? But these poems are about me. So as I wrote this book, I was thinking, well, people don't like this, they don't like my family. It's no pressure there, right? So I did have to share these poems with my family, and these are family-approved poems. I can share them with you today. So I want to say that my family is matriarchal. That is the center of our family. We lost our grandmother. There was a hole, in the family. And as I was completing my MFA at Indiana University, my grandmother passed, and so she didn't get to see the first book, and she didn't get to read these poems, and she would have read these poems. These are my grandparents on the cover, by the way, and my uncle, who was a graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design, did this cover. So he was the first visual artist that I knew. So it was important that he do this cover for me. So thinking about that matriarchal center of our family, the book is organized in that way, where there are quotes from women writers, particularly that are influential to me. And so there's epigraphs from these women throughout the book. So I'm going to read this kind of in three phases, and each will be introduced by an epigraph from the book. So the first epigraph. For I am rightful fellow of their band. My best allegiances are to the dead. Gwendolyn Brooks. coffer. And this is for my grandmother. Lord, loose this blues, throb of bruise encased in coffer. I am a man of grave undoing. The month is June, but nothing blooms. Our matriarch, Mamie Lee, Southern aura, gives up the ghost, plows our hearts. Knees bent to hospital hallways, we wail without conscience, no hand to catch the trail, infinite stream, face submerged, body unhinged. Tubes and needles catapult the beat of hearts, erode bravado. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Who will right this fall? Your names, please, your names. Keep wringing your hands, keep a spade close to your heart, hold fast in the night's demise, think, dig. When the spirit flies the coffer, dear Father, what is our portion? Who is barren and who coin? Third eye. Consider yourself woven and see what your gut says. Voice frayed and scratch, swift pulse, knot stomach. Recall the hour you saw yourself alive, out of body, when three-dimensional became epiphany, like the first time you did anything. Today, you explain, ways your eye spied heaven, shot back down, saw yourself pot-bellied and afroed. Aged in single digits, you talked to cousins in the middle room where Mamie Lee burned cigarettes instead of smoking, and soap operas played endlessly, stories no child disclosed. Consider yourself stitch, soft thread that ties one tale to next. Find niche, hover, trust sixth sense, give scenes to spill. Cacophony, harmony, be owner, open your mouth, spin yarn to breath. So, and it's funny, all the poems that were mentioned in the introduction are poems I'm going to read today. I had an uncle that used to take me on dates, and on his dates, I have no idea why, but I heard a lot of good music on these dates. So in the back of this car, I'm listening to Donny Hathaway and the Stylistics, and also Al Green. So if you know Al Green is a preacher now, he is a minister. But this poem is coming from a place before that happened, and imagining him in a different way, I guess. This is called Al Green Was a Preacher. Al Green was a preacher before he was a pastor. Let me explain. If you can't find a sermon in love and happiness, something's wrong. He slides from one strange world to the next, like Uncle Jimmy navigating his sky blue cougar down West Market. Al testifies and we glide past the coffee cup where we ate greasy burgers and white paper, the ring and sugar of onions steamed inside, past Jay's where Mama bought my black Chuck Taylors for first grade, past the Cavalier Inn, a bar only a biker could love, peeling paint and look-away faces, past the laundromat where Daddy George washed our clothes and big chrome troughs that ate our change, bleached our robes. Al would know this world, would sing of the corners jut to meet you, the pain of the angle, how one street runs right into the next, no one raising eyebrows. We ride deeper west, rising out of our seats and settling back to the cushions with each pock in the road. Past St. Columba, where I bloodied Jay's nose in the lunch line. Best friend, how many times can I say I'm sorry? Past Shawnee, where Mama, Aunt Sissy, and Uncle Jimmy said high school is not enough. Past empty knee-high bottles, bodies of cigarettes bent in gutters, what smoldered in the grip of unknown lips, discarded for other pleasures. Many a lesson waits on our streets, like how to catch lightning bugs in mayonnaise jars, how to poke holes in lids to let trophies breathe, how to balance your weight on two bicycle wheels, never fall, ride like the unfettered skip of your heart. Hood. In memory of smokestack lightning, red brick wall and weight, graffiti buzz scrawled high and wrong, the misspelled, misrepresented, and sweet run sour in the slabs of cement, bath of street lamp, gutter litter, alley to alley end zone, BB gun aim, tree climb, bird's eye view, calls ignored for lunch, for supper, sorry, too busy in branches. In the wake of Uncle Buddy's fist and forearm through side door glass, ambulance on our would-be 50-yard line, suture map of fold and tuck, flesh, envelope. No need for meds, he thinks. I'm fine. Never mind the call to swallow. In contempt of stilted tongue, shuttle black alphabets like lost blood, LNN, wind and lash, Kentucky to Tennessee, or skip prattle like hopscotch grids, and lime, lemon, pink electric, asphalt body rock, until there is no curb between street and skin, warm, black, waved. The image is fire, blackening the vague lines into defiance. Audre Lorde. Second child. Does this explain the heart? How one finds another, families intertwine like crops on farms, standing root to root. John and Matilda's second born, George and Leola's second star, miles traveled to find the beat. Selma bred and wilting in all its heat, longing for the north to cool the edge. 9 miles raised on beans and cornbread, a living grinding bathtubs at American standard. Namesakes sent to college when you only finished 6th grade. Graduations, grandchildren, heart attack, stroke. How one saves space in the bed, years after the other is called home. No one loves like this anymore. None their fault, the heart. Porch. The Allens always ate outside. Forget kitchen, dining room, have a seat on the porch. Listen to the crack of wood as you find your space. Meditate on a forkful of something hot and homemade. What good is a table, square of silence, meeting of worn faces after a day's pull and sweat? Lawn chairs and steps are your longing, June's humid kiss against your cheek, a smile and wave from your neighbor as you balance a plate in your lap, relish ceremony, return courtesy. Forget third shift pays more, overtime is hard to come by, the fear of falling short. Your eyes are filled with familiar hands, lifelines with the same forks, calluses you could own. So I gave myself this crazy poets challenge, and I said, why don't you create a new poetry form every book? And which is kind of like, why would you do that to yourself? But the idea is that I want people to be interested in poetry, to discuss poetry. And so with the first book, it was the alternate take. If you think about albums with different versions of songs, if you like, say, Miles Davis, and you listen to So What, and there's another version of it on the album, and it's slightly different. There's different nuances there. So I decided that I wanted to write a poem that was steeped in the blues tradition, but I didn't want to write a blues. My grandfather worked, and his brothers worked as a sharecropper. The sharecroppers in Alabama before they moved to Kentucky. I was listening to Son House and Skip James, and I was listening to that kind of emotional heft of the blues. But then I thought, well, instead of writing a blues, why don't I write a form that's based on the structure of a guitar? So does anybody play guitar? About guitar tablature, what it looks like on the page? So I basically took, it's similar to guitar tablature, but each line in the song begins with the letter of the name of the string of a guitar. So it's E, A, D, G, B, E, and it goes down. And on the page, it goes across, and each section is separated, kind of like the césure or natural pause, saying a line of the poem is broken up with a line. So it looks like you're looking at frets on the poem. So the form was born. Someone else named it actually because I couldn't, for some reason, I couldn't see fret. But, so why did you call it a fret? And I was like, oh, okay. And so the fret in a sense is about struggle. It's called the fret, but it's also about fretting, naturally. So this is the sorrows of fret in 3 chords. 1, each day, sun to borrowed sun, and hours of sweat and sorrow, aligned as 3 stars, the belt of Orion, 3 brothers, Duke, Buddy, and Bo, stretch crack hands to scorned earth, grab a heart's fill, Mr. Mentor's debt, the fly in one ear, bail the saving grace. How can 6 hands cover such tall orders, even tempered, but hardly satisfied? They live in lack. 2, eluding pangs of moonlight, hunger of night, 3 men bloodbound, allow little rest, limbs swing like hour, minute, and second hands, flesh drawn through spike clouds at their ankles, the pits of their stomachs growl in time to work songs, the sun's lash. The seeds inside the clouds, Buddy says, can work as feed, scattered for peck of beak. Mentors ether now, bad dream, floating light as a bale of cotton. 3, end our toil in vain, the rusted reins that clank a 12-bar blues, albeit an invisible instrument. We hunker in the shadow of sound, divided in the map of the row, one more sack, full to feed the wicked gin, fast master of commerce, tool of chaos, raised in wage of war. Buddy says Fitz, the best warlord. Call him boss if you want. Buddy evokes another name, face slap, an upper hand, black finger to fret. So I have several untitled poems in the book, and they have, instead of a title, they have a cross. And when you see the cross in the book, it's kind of like a meditation. It's a deep breath before the poem is read. So this is one of those untitled poems. And the first line of the poem is, there is a cotton field in Sardis, Alabama. There is a cotton field in Sardis, Alabama, a stretch of mud and white spread like the best patchwork before the church where great-grand Matilda was buried. After the service, my kin walked aisles of puff and profit, ushered samples back to bluegrass, turned tufts between our fingers to test the pain man made. I lost that piece of cotton, raw resource from the birth of my name, something I can't get back unless I drive the miles, see the south of my youth in a second pilgrimage. When my days are done, my words no longer barter, take me there. Open the urn, spread my ashes over evil's low fruit. Let the burn stain the ankle-high clouds, remind anyone brave enough to walk the rows, how low a back must bend to fill a sack of sorrow. Tell me your names, tell me your bashful names, and I will testify. Lucille Clifton. Turn with me this book of names, murmur of black skin come and gone. Tell me you've heard these names before, exhaled over corn stalks, sorghum, fields of lines as midnight torch. I raise each and every till my hands grow weak from weight, split like silk before corn, everything buried, everything birthed in earth, something nurtured, watered from parted rows. Matilda, Leola, John, George, Mamie Lee, Mamie Lee, Mamie Lee. Amen. So my grandfather's been a deacon in the same church like before I was born. And here's another poet's challenge to myself. Why don't you have a poem that looks like pastor's notes from the church bulletin? So, pastor's notes, Sunday, May 8th, 2005. Bus trip. Deposits for the Saturday, July 9th Guiding Star shopping excursion to Gatlinburg, Tennessee must be received in full by Sunday, May 15th. The buses will leave promptly from the main church lot on 28th and Muhammad Ali Boulevard at 8 a.m. Please arrive early. No refunds will be given. Yes, this includes those who miss the bus. Pastor's Anniversary. Please join us on Sunday, June 19th for our annual Juneteenth Pastor's Anniversary celebration. Come celebrate Reverend and Mrs. Hurd's 25 years of faithful leadership with a special Sunday worship service, followed by the pastor's dinner in the church rectory hall. Donations to the Reverend and Mrs. Hurd will be collected by the Women's Auxiliary. Sick and shut in. Reverend Hurd asks all members of Guiding Star Missionary Baptist Church to pray for our brothers and sisters who are unable to attend services this Sunday. Georgia Arnold, Antoine Bess, April Books, Walter Campbell, Davis Fry, Mamie L. Green, J.D. Hunter, Nathaniel Mack, Cleophas Thomas, Geraldine Watts. If you are able to phone or visit these members, please do so at your earliest convenience. Don't forget our church family. Even in absence, their spirit walks with us. Towers. Funny, near death, we are stacked like the passage. Trayton Oak Baptist. Towers without chains, floor after floor, in wait of the end of days. I hear this is your life. East End, a tower of wilt, too much to mourn in one plot. You don't bound down the street anymore. Gait half slow drag, half pimp. Voice well-bottom bark drummed from pit of chest. Face cloaked in full beard, cast of eyes over horn-rimmed glasses, down at all as if looking through, always looking. None of that now, not one scrap. Uncle, do you know your mother's dead? Do you have the heart to grieve? Raise your sleeve, show me the tuck has healed. Just down Broadway, nothing a talk can't bridge, but you feel an age from us now. One long ride of lonely, neither black sheep nor scapegoat. You are ghost, no presence to blame or kick, and I am afraid to raise your name. Thank you. Do we have time for questions? Should I ask if there are questions? Does anyone have questions for me? Questions. When did I start writing? I remember in grade school, it was fiction. I used to make up mystery stories, and I would share them with the class, and they were like a series, so kids would like look forward to my stories. And when people started to anticipate my stories, I was like there's something to that, you know? And it made me feel good. And somehow I switched to poetry. I was a punk rock kid in Iowa City, Iowa, and Iowa City, Iowa had punk rock, if you can imagine that. And when I first started to write poems, my poems got really short, like punk songs, so that's what I blame it on. I wrote really short poems, like 30-second punk songs, so I think that's how it happened. I'll blame it on that. That was the beginning. Any other questions? Anybody else have questions? Yeah.
When presenting poems, I've been to a number of different poetry readings, and different people present them in different ways. I'm always kind of curious to ask the writer,
Mm-hmm.
do you go about trying to find a particular way you want to present your poetry vocally, or is it more a matter of you just trying to maintain a very even tone and let the words speak for themselves?
I think when I think about poetry, I always think about rhythm. It's image and it's rhythm, but the poetry should always be musical. And I think I would probably do you a disservice as the reader if I didn't emphasize the music that was there. So I want you to hear that. I want you to feel how some lines kind of fall into like an unrhymed iambic, you know, and you get it. You know, I want that to be there. So that's important for me. And I mean, I know performance poets. And that's the thing is like, I think now as poets, like I'm not even into like drawing lines, like you're a performance poet and you're a stage poet and you're a page poet. Like, you know, I mean, I think you have to perform. If you're gonna be a reader, you have to perform. You have to perform the work. So I think maybe I perform a little less than some people. I'm the happy medium, maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's it. That's a good question though. Any other questions? Yeah.
Who do you recommend reading right now?
Oh, recommend reading. Top 3. Now, this is going to be funny because this is going to be all like Kentucky and Indiana. Because I'm in Indiana, but from Louisville, of course. So I would say Adrian Matika, The Big Smoke, the book of persona poems about Jack Johnson, which is just like really good. Rebecca Gale Howell, who's no longer in Kentucky, but Kentucky-based writer. She has a Turinder and Apocalypse, which is a great book. It looks like a little farmer's almanac kind of shape. Like you can't miss that book on the shelf. Who else would I say? I'll probably say Frank S. Walker's last book, the Medgar Evers poems, which you know, I've known Frank since I was like 17, so he's kind of been like a poetry mentor for me. But I told him when he first started writing the book that that's probably his best book, and he's written a lot of books of poems, but I think that's one of his best books. So I would recommend that one also. So we're keeping it at 3. But all those are good. Another good question. Anybody else? Questions? Thank you all.
What was that first one?
Adrian Matika. He's a professor at Indiana University. Yeah, it's The Big Smoke is the name of that book. That's a really good book. Also a book of persona poems. He's writing as Jack Johnson. So that's it's a book that's like well researched and well executed. It's really good. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.